Hello, my friend, and welcome back to the Modern Cave Women podcast. So, today's topic is about asking yourself and checking it out, are all your clothes made from petroleum? So, listen, I do not consider myself to be particularly stylish. In fact, historically, I had often shown up to events dressed wrongly, maybe even tragically. So, I'll tell you one of my most inappropriate moments in a minute. But for now, the one thing that the modern cave woman in me knows about clothes, and I do concern myself with, is that synthetic fabrics like polyester, nylon, rayon, spandex, all those similar types, are made out of petroleum and are essentially plastic. So years ago, I learned about this, and I didn't really concern myself with it beyond comfort and my awareness about the effects of oil production in our environment from actually working in the industry for years. So that's a topic for another day. But the comfort factor was really the primary thing, I'll be honest with you. I was like, these fabrics made me an itchy, sweaty little cave woman and were just uncomfortable. And so the other day, I was learning about microplastics, and maybe you've been hearing about this in the news too. And I saw this lovely statistic that we all have about a teaspoon of microplastics floating around in our bodies. And they have even found significant amounts in people's hearts and brains. So I feel like there are serious concerns about the hazards of this on our health. And now I'm not a doctor, so obviously I'd encourage you to do your own research on this if it's important to you. But one thing that popped up that surprised me a little was the connection to wearing these plastic-based materials and how they leach chemicals and slough off microplastics that are highly likely to be ingested, breathed in, and can even enter our bloodstream through our skin. So this wasn't really a new concept to me. I had read years and years ago a book by Suzanne Summers where she talked about how polyester leached chemicals into our skin, which was just really a boost to how I was already trying to make sure I had more natural fibers in my environment. But it's something to think about, right? So you might actually be able to protect your health by quitting wearing plastic-based clothing and look for more natural fibers. Now, here's the thing though. I read estimates that 80 to 90% of clothing produced is made from synthetics. And I really do tend to believe it because, of course, years ago when I quit buying polyester, rayon, and the like, my shopping experience got more challenging. Not necessarily more expensive, though, by the way. You might think that because we often see these fast fashion polyester kind of clothing that seems very cheap. But in my experience, it's pretty simple, comparable. Comparable is the word I'm looking for, to buy something that's cotton or linen or even silk. I don't tend to go for silk myself, but it is a natural fiber if you're going for something like that. In any case, one thing that does bother me a little, and this is a little bit aside, when I was shopping and looking, I thought, oh, well, I'll start with something high-end, luxury, maybe even couture clothing would be more likely to have natural fibers. And I found the opposite. I found that most of it is still polyester. So just for a small example, there's a brand of caftans, which I think are super cute by this designer. I believe her name is Camilla. Anyway, they cost hundreds of dollars. Some of them are even over $1,000, and they're still polyester. And on the other hand, I've found through even just like general big box stores, cotton caftans and the like, that are less than $100. Some are actually very, very inexpensive. So we can have the conversation about, the art side of couture clothing and things like that. But I really just wanted to put out a simple example of how if you're looking for something, the cost isn't necessarily going to be a factor, whether it's going to be a synthetic or a natural fiber. Just kind of an aside. Now, there are lots of topics around clothes to cover, like fast fashion and things like that, but I'm just going to leave it here where I'm encouraging you to consider the well being benefits to yourself and your loved ones, even, right? Like, encourage your loved ones, if this sounds good to you, of wearing sleeping in, like your sheets, and using more natural fibers in your environment. Even your furniture or your shoes and things like that. And as I'm leaving that there with you to ponder, I'll tell you my embarrassing fashion faux pas to wrap up. So, I went to college in a cold state, but my parents lived in a hot state. And I finished school early and had to wait a few months for graduation, so I went to stay with them. And where they lived, it was really a camouflage short kind of weather if you go outside in May. Excuse me. So it didn't really dawn on me to pack heavy for going back to graduation up north. I was basically just thinking it's May, so it's warm everywhere, right? I'd still be comfortable with what I was wearing. And at that point, obviously, I was maybe 20 years old. I was pretty much unaware of dress codes in general. It just wasn't something that had been part of my life. I wasn't exposed to a lot of like high-end events and things like that. So the day of the first luncheon, back at my graduation, it was cold and raining, and I just had to wear my casual little summer outfit. And when I got there, I was freezing cold and instantly aware that I was out of place. Like everyone else was dressed up in more formal layers, even. So honestly, I wasn't mortified. I am who I am, but I did leave and go to the store for a jacket as soon as I possibly could get away. So that's one of my most uncomfortable disasters, but I learned, right? Don't worry. I got very good at asking about the dress code and checking my weather app before I go to events. So I will wrap up with that. And I would love to hear from you your thoughts about synthetic clothing, polyester clothing, things like that. And if you have experience with shopping for natural fibers, and I'd love to hear about that too, because tips and tricks are always something I appreciate. So let me know your thoughts and have a beautiful day. Bye.